South Florida Garden Show takes your calls live Saturday morning 6 to 9 a.m. to help with all your landscaping challenges. Saturday morning from 6 to 9 on South Florida's Money Talk Radio Network.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Welcome to your Hometown Health Show, brought to you by Trilogy Home Healthcare, the industry leader with over 30 years of experience in providing home healthcare services such as skilled nursing, physical and occupational therapy, home health aides, and other specialized care to your homes throughout the state. Please tune in every other week as we bring you a range of good information from specialists in the field to help make you more informed and living healthy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Good evening. You are listening to your Hometown Health Show, sponsored by Trilogy. I'm Yolanda Santana, host of the show, and tonight we have Jennifer Smith in for Liza May. Hi, Jen.
Hello.
And as our special guest, we have Dr. Anisa Ahmad. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
She's a certified radiation oncologist, and Dr. Edgardo Santos, medical oncologist. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
So again, these are our special guests from 21st Century Oncology. And before we get started, I'd like to let you know we're on WWNN. We're on 1470 AM, 95.3 FM, 96.9 FM, and 103.9 FM. And you can also watch us live on Facebook, amp2.tv. Well, again, we're going to get started here. And Jen, if you could, to our new listeners and viewers, tell us a little bit about Trilogy and what you guys do.
Sure. Well, good evening, everyone. We are Trilogy Home Health. We are a Medicare certified home health agency. We service almost the entire state of Florida and offer your traditional Medicare services such as skilled nursing, which includes medication management, wound care, disease process education, IV therapy, physical, occupational, speech, and respiratory therapy, medical social worker, home health aide, but we also provide services such as pelvic floor rehab for incontinence, lymphedema therapy, anodyne infrared light therapy, vestibular therapy, fluid imbalance status monitoring, and best of all, to our accounts, you get dedicated home health coordinators to follow your patients from start to finish to ensure a very smooth transition. So,
wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Now to our very special guest, Dr. Anisa Ahmad. Why don't you start telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your practice, 21st Century Oncology.
Okay, so I practice in Aventura right now as a radiation oncologist, and at our center we treat everything, all the cancers except children's cancer, which has to be treated at special centers. I'm originally from the islands. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I trained in England and then at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. And then I joined as assistant professor there, later associate professor at University of Miami and clinical director, and then moved up to 21st Century Oncology, which is the largest group in Trinidad, in the United States, but recently I think has joined with a group that is now probably one of the largest in the world. So yes. It's very nice setting to work in. We focus on careful communication with patients and strong advocacy to patients and effective teamwork with the community physicians. So it's a very comfortable environment, and I like treating out in the community because patients want to be treated near home when they have cancer, so they have a better quality of life.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, Dr. Santos, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself as well?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I am a medical oncology focused in lung cancer and head and neck. Basically, in my past, I was a professor of medicine at Tulane University and University of Miami. After that, I was leading the research in Lung Cancer Institute in Boca Raton, Florida, where I was for the last 9 years until I joined 21st Century we have a new group called Florida Precision Oncology. It's a subdivision of 21st Century. We also practice in Aventura, and that's where we at.
Okay, great. So I have here, I understand that 21st Century Oncology is now Genesis Care. With that being said, can you tell our listeners how many centers you now have and what exactly that means for your patients?
Well, we previously had about 165 centers throughout the United States and some in Latin America. By joining Genesis, we now are part of a group with more than 440 locations worldwide. But within the United States have been increasing the number of centers. We have increasing the technology that we're using and streamlining operations so that the quality of care is going to be optimal. So we do have now much better bargaining power in purchasing new equipment and state-of-the-art equipment so that it becomes affordable for patients. And that's one of the benefits of being treated in a community-based center like Dr. Santos's group and the radiation group, is that in the United States, the cost is a fraction of what it costs to be treated in a hospital. And for many patients, that can mean the difference between being able to be treated and not being able to be treated. So Genesis has more than 5,000 doctors, and that's quite a large group. And we are doing quite a lot of peer review, where we're now checking the quality of each other. We're developing systems to check the quality so people are not out on their own doing anything that they want, that the quality is very tightly controlled for the benefit of the patients.
And that technology, to add on to what Dr. Ahmad said, is some of that technology is available right here in Broward, in Plantation, and going to be available in Plantation and Pembroke Pines. So that's very exciting for 21st Century Oncology, to the doctors, to the patients in this community right here, right in our backyards.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's fantastic. So you guys cover a very large area, and you offer a lot of very important services. Dr. Santos, can you tell our listeners the importance of early detection screening?
Yeah, so certainly, can you listen to me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
Yeah, so cancer screening is very important because it's the way how can we detect early problems, and certainly by doing that, this is going to impact the survival of the patients. So unfortunately, in the last month, because of the impact of this virus, there has been a lot of problem with screening and testing, and this is going to be reflected in the future, unfortunately. So in our center, we also participate in certain kind of screening. As I mentioned before, one of my area is lung cancer. So there is a lot of input now in lung cancer screening that has been very well established in the recent years. But everything has been impacted, not only for the screening, but all those kind of elective procedures, as you know. And so somehow I think that we need to go back to our track, or otherwise, we are going to see those numbers of not only increasing the late detection, which is going to impact also patient's life.
Okay. So now with the current global pandemic, many clinicians are having to change the way they're seeing and treating patients. Can you tell our listeners how you all have adapted to these changes?
Well, the entire group itself, there are changes that are global to the group, and then there are changes that specific to medical oncology, specific to to gynecology, specifically to urology, to surgery, and to radiation oncology. But globally, there are additional cleaning protocols using specific safe chemicals to the staff that would clean. So at each time a patient comes in, the area is cleaned. We have tried to have one patient in our center at a time, which takes a lot of orchestration. We call the patient before they come in to make sure they have no symptoms. They have to wear a mask. When they come in, we ask them to wait in the corner before we get them in. Once they're in, we have changed our protocols within the waiting room, so we have no coffee stations anymore, no magazines to avoid contamination. And the staff, we have not stopped treating patients who are COVID positive. So there are centers now, big centers in the United States, actually, I would say highly ranked centers that have said, look, if you're COVID positive, you're going to stay away for 20 days. And for some patients, like a head and neck patients undergoing radiation, that could mean death. It could mean becoming uncurable, a lung. But it's in stone. You're not going to come in. You're not going to be treated. We have not. We have set up for radiation where we will treat at the end of the day. We have been very lucky, and I have really impressed with 21st Century Oncology / Genesis in that we have not really had severe shortages of protective equipment, and they're very creative. So now, none of the centers, I am familiar with all the other centers of my colleagues, where they can get alcohol. 70% alcohol that we clean things with. There are some things you can't clean with bleach. And they found some distillery in Central Florida or somewhere that got all these gallons and gallons. And then the therapists made little spray bottles, and then we just spray whatever we need to clean. And it's clever. And I've seen centers right now that they have one jar of bleach where they're dipping stuff in bleach to clean, which is hard for staff. So we have not had a problem getting shields. We have not had a problem getting masks. So our staff is protected. There's a great emphasis, because if the staff goes down, who's going to treat the patients? Most centers don't have double staff. Have a second set of staff on hold. So the staff is very well protected. We take the temperature of all the staff as they come in and all the patients as they come in. And if we suspect a patient may have the symptoms, we make sure that they get tested and make sure that we choose the results. We do have a problem globally, actually, but speaking to friends, where patients want their treatment. So when you ask and you screen, do you have symptoms, especially at the big hospitals, they say, no, we don't have symptoms, because they want to get into the building. And then they deteriorate, and then you die. Yeah, they want to get in.
Yeah.
So we're aware of it. We're very careful and sensitive to the patient as well. As I say, it's very important that we protect you and you protect everybody else. So there's been adequate supplies. We have not had major problems. Very good organization, great flow of information on what you're supposed to do, strict protocols. We have huddles every morning. Every clinic has to get together every morning and see what the updates are and make sure everybody's informed.
Perfect. On that note, we're going to continue after a commercial break. We'll be right back. So stay tuned.
Trilogy was established in 2016 by industry experts with over 30 years in home health care operations spanning 30-plus counties throughout the state of Florida. With offices in Jacksonville, Port St. Lucie, West Palm Beach, we strive to provide the most optimal care to our patients in a fun, forward-thinking environment. Our focus is on personal relationships, whether with an employee, a patient, or an outside community. Because we know that when people enjoy what they do, it becomes why they do it. Call Trilogy today at 954-689-6660 and ask for more information. In addition to offering the standard mix of services, SN, PT, OT, speech, MSW, and HHA, we also take great pride in being on the cutting edge and offering care and education to our licensed clinicians in other areas most agencies likely don't offer. Emotional and behavioral health with our psych nursing, biofeedback for bladder incontinence and pelvic pain, chemotherapy, IV hydration, antibiotic and respiratory therapy. Call today at 954-689-6660. Trilogy Home Care. You have been listening to the Trilogy Home Health Show, and if you wish to be a guest on our show, please call us at 561-670-9213 and let us share your knowledge and information with our listeners. Trilogy Home Health Care Show enjoys serving the community and bringing doctors and facilities of interest to help educate and inform the community. Please call us at 561-670-9213 and let us put you on the airwaves with the Trilogy Home Health Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. You are listening and watching your Hometown Health Show, and I am Yolanda, your host. Again, we have Jennifer Smith from Trilogy, Dr. Ahmad, and Dr. Santos from 21st Century Oncology, as well as, now Genesis Care. We were just talking about how you guys have adapted to the pandemic, and I think Dr. Santos wanted to add something. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Yolanda. So, no, Dr. Ahmad was totally correct. Genesis Care, 21st Century, she represents radiation oncology, I represent medical oncology, but it's more than that. We have other specialty, urologists, surgeon, that also are part of the group. And I think, and I'll quote Dr. Ahmad, that we have been very grateful that we have a PPE in place to protect ourselves and at the same time to protect our patient. Today was our first day in our new headquarters. We opened today our new office close to the hospital. So the good thing of this is like at least Florida Precision Oncology we improve. So every patient that goes there, besides everything that Dr. Ahmad said about protection and screening and everything to be safe, every patient has their own private room. And also when they receive chemotherapy, they also have completely privacy. So that's an improvement that we have done at least in our group. So I just want to add that, but certainly I think that if everyone put their effort and everyone collaborate, not only the staff and us as a professional, healthcare professional, but also the patient and the relative, I think that we can make it, all of us together. It's very important that we protect each other.
Yes.
And in addition, what the company has been very, very quick to provide all the technology we need for telehealth very rapidly. We have a great information technology platform. And actually, initially I was a little reluctant. I want to see the patient on follow-up. But if you see a patient on follow-up, I wear like 3 masks, and then I have a big shield with a helmet. So basically, the patient is here, and if I'm doing telehealth, we're like this, like the way I'm seeing you now. And I tell the patient, take your mask off, whether the patient's in another room in the center or at home. I take my mask off, and then we can talk forever. And the other thing is, if you're with a patient, you have to minimize your exposure to anybody. So you're trying to get out of the room. You're doing what is important for the patient, but then you're trying to get out, and you have to stay 6 feet away. But this way, I could sit and talk to you the whole day. I'm not trying to get out of the room. So I find the quality of the communication is actually better. So we do as much as we can for tele. Of course, patients have to come in for their chemotherapy and they have to come in for their radiation. Or if they have a serious discussion, they want to come in, that's fine. They always have to consent to that. But I'm very impressed with the technology.
Yolanda, sorry, besides the telemedicine, at least in the hematology oncology field, we have different scheduling, different kind of treatment. So thank God we are able to sometimes switch from intravenous drug to oral medication, and also the scheduling, perhaps to move the therapy every 2 weeks to every 3 or every 4 weeks without losing efficacy. So we also have implemented that, not only us in Florida Precision Oncology, but also across the country, all our colleagues in hematology oncology, we are doing that to expose the patient, as Dr. Ahmad said, less. I mean, if we can expand the therapy, it's much better for them, to stay at home rather than to come every 2 weeks, for example.
Definitely. And that makes complete sense. So, doctors, if you can tell us, or if you can add to how your two specialties work together.
Well, I guess.
Well, certainly, radiation oncology and medical oncology were very, very close, okay? Very close. Dr. Amayo mentioned a case of head and neck cancer or any kind of tumor. I mean, we work as a team, okay? The most important thing is communication from the different specialty. Perhaps the one missing here would be the surgeon, but we are very close. And there are several kinds of diseases in which the therapy that Dr. Ahmad and people like me, we give to the patient are given together, okay, at the same time or sequential. So the coordination between the radiation oncology and the medical oncology is very, very thin. We need to be very precise so the outcomes for each of the patients will be the best possible. So, but we are very close working together. Dr. Ahmad?
So there are some cancers, for example, breast cancer, where that the patient needs surgery to remove that lump. And then if there are features on that pathology that says this cancer is showing like it's going to recur and possibly in the rest of the body, that patient needs to see the medical oncologist, who is the person who is qualified to make that decision and request additional tests. And if the patient needs systemic therapy, which would include, chemotherapy or molecular therapy or targeted therapy and all the new therapies, the medical oncologist is the person with that knowledge to recommend it and then to execute it and give the patient. And then to prevent that cancer recurring in the breast, the P is going to send the patient on for radiation. So that patient had to have surgery and chemotherapy, molecular therapy, hormonal therapy, and then radiation to get the optimal chance of cure. On the other hand, we have organ sparing. So one of the things that Dr. Santos specializes in head and neck cancer. So if you have somebody with a voice box cancer, you don't want to remove somebody's voice box if you can save it, or tongue cancer. You don't want to remove that. So the surgeon plays a great role in staging it and looking down, a head and neck surgeon, and taking biopsies and telling us exactly where it is. But then that patient has to have radiation and chemotherapy together. And if I am late and I delay his chemo, or he's late and he delays my chemo, that'll affect the patient. So we're constantly having to coordinate like an orchestra very smoothly. And if the patient has radiation without the chemo, the cure rate is not as high. If the patient has chemo without the radiation, the cure rate. So they go together. And then there are some patients who may just need chemotherapy and no radiation. And there are some patients who might just need radiation and no chemotherapy. So it really varies by the case, the stage, but we're both qualified to make that determination. And very often patients don't read the textbook. So you have weird things coming through. And we make a phone call and have a little chat and discussion. And then we say, okay, this is the best way for the patient.
Thank you for that explanation. Now, we're running a little bit short on time. I'm so sorry. If you could please give us an example or a scenario in which you work with Trilogy, and also how someone can get a hold of you.
That was my comment, that Trilogy Home Healthcare, classic example in which I will involve everyone. Classic example is a myeloma patient. A myeloma patient comes with a problem in the spine, possible core compression of pain. That patient will end up with Dr. Ahmed that will provide palliative to that specific area with pain. Patient comes to me as a therapy systemically, but what about Trilogy? That patient will need a lot of physical therapy, occupational therapy. So at the same time, like Dr. Ahmed, radiation oncology and medical oncology, we are working, Trilogy Home Healthcare is also providing support to the patient. So that's a classic example, but like that, many, many others. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And how do they get a hold of you?
Well, I think you just search. Doctor, you just search Dr. Santos's name, and now you'll get it. The same thing, you can search my name or search for 21st Century Oncology, chemotherapy in Aventura, or radiation, and you get but our number is 305-692-1100.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Dr.
Our
Santos?
one, Florida Precision Oncology, FPO, Aventura, Florida, and our office number is 561-334-2850.
Wonderful. And as far as hours of operation, appointment only?
Hours operation from Monday through Friday. Appointments are really giving almost immediately. Waiting time is very, very minimal, basically. So we are just here for you guys and trying to help as many people as we can.
Yeah, that's another big difference between the community centers and the hospitals, in that Dr. Santos could call me the same day, and if the patient is available, I could see the patient the same day. We don't really have this big, clunky bureaucracy that patient has to get in and get accepted in the hospital. One phone call, the patient's accepted. All we need is the records. Very often we do an appointment so that the patient we can get themselves organized and we can get organized, but usually we can see the patient the same day. And so it's very convenient. Also on call, we are available 24 hours a day with our on-call physicians.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you both so much for joining us and being our special guests this evening. I want to thank Trilogy as well. Thank you, Jennifer, for coming on. And I hope you both have a great evening. Dr. Ahmad and Dr. Santos, thank you again. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Viewers.
Thank you for having us.
Goodbye.
Trilogy Home Healthcare invites you to call our offices before making a decision about your home health and rehabilitative care. Different from other agencies, Trilogy offers specialized service that other agencies don't, providing exceptional care. That's who we are and what we do. Call us at 866-599-4959 or go to trilogyhomehealthcare.com.